Okay, so good morning, Cecilia. How are you?
Good day, Temi. I'm fine. I'm happy to be here with
Yeah,
you.
great to be here to finally talk about this exhibition and this whole experience of the Dreamkeeper. It's been a long time coming, and of course, the pandemic has made it challenging for us to be together in the same space talking about this, which
Yes.
would have been wonderful. But I think by the wonders of technology, we find a way.
Yeah.
So right now I'm talking from Malmo and you are speaking from Uppsala?
Yes, I'm sitting just outside my house here on my patio, and it's a beautiful day. Sunlight, a little bit too much sunlight, maybe, but
Great.
yeah.
So what I wanted to do today is really just have a conversation about allow us to take a few steps back now that the exhibition has been open for about a month.
Mm-hmm.
To allow us to take a few steps back and think about the process and, share with people who may or may not be able to see the exhibition, like our thinking and what brought us to the space of the exhibition.
Yeah.
So I hope that we could do that today. And the sort of title, I guess, of this conversation is Blood, Earth and Water, which I know are elements that are very important to you and your practice in this work, but also help us to sort of metaphorically think about the ways in which we are connected, how we think about ancestry and belonging, but also our relationship to the earth and its wisdom. Yeah. So to begin with, I just wanted us to introduce ourselves in whatever way is possible. I'm currently reading this amazing book by Alexis Pauline Gumbs called Undrowned, Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals. And in a chapter that is about remembering, in this beautiful poetic interlude, she offers this prayer. She says, "This is my prayer. May anyone who seeks to mention you be called to learn the language of those who first loved you. May you study the pink of yourself, know yourself, riverine and coast. May you taste the fresh and the salt water of yourself and know what only you can know. May you live in the mouth of the river, meeting place of the tides. May all blessings flow through you." So I wanted to begin with her words and this invocation for people when they meet to learn the language of those who first loved you, as a way to begin a conversation about where we're coming from, what we bring to the space of the Dreamkeeper and to our collaboration and our meeting and our long form dialogue. So Cecilia, introduce yourself. Tell me who brings you here, what ancestors, what stories, what landscapes?
Yeah, I just want to say that Alexis, this poem or text is so breathtaking because it goes to the core of something that is like, these are memories almost. She's putting words to memories that I like. Am I really, is this my own experience, or is this a collective memory? So what brings me to this work that we've been doing, or this kind of process? I've been working as an artist for 20 years or something, and as a visual artist and performance artist, and I think it's like the last 15 years I've been using my own body and my own story or history, both history and story, in my work. And there are, of course, many stories to be told, but the one I'm focusing on here and also before, it's the black part. I call it my black history, the Afro-diasporan part of myself. I grew up in a household with a white mother and a black father. My dad's background is that he's born in Montreal in Canada, but he has a Caribbean, both on his mother's and father's side. They come from different Caribbean islands. So he grew up in a kind of Caribbean community, not only Caribbean community, because the community around him was both Chinese and Polish, a lot of Jewish children that had it was from many parts of the world, and also from many Caribbean islands. So I have a French last name, but my Canadian family, they used French and English when they communicate. So this background, the one that is connected to my father's history, it is the result of this crime that the transatlantic slave trade was. And there is much to say about that crime. It's not over yet. I mean, there is a lot of stories to tell, but if I see it from the perspective of bodies moving and changing place, what it brings to me is a vast, what do you call it? It's both a richness in that there are many stories connected to this past, things that cannot always be proven. Like, for instance, I know some of the islands where my ancestors come from, the Caribbean islands, but there are also one or two islands that I don't know. And it's the same with the journey from the African continent. At this moment in time, my family, we don't have a clue from which African countries that we origin. Maybe we will never know. And of course, this is both a kind of sadness to not really know exactly, but in this lack of knowledge, there is also another kind of both not freedom, but more it becomes this very rich Pan-African, maybe a bit, what you call it, there are both good and bad things with this kind of thought of the Pan-African way of interpreting or how to bring forth a Black community. But what I'm trying to say is that because we don't have a specific geographical spot that we can say we came from this place, that also invites us to embrace a lot of places and a lot of stories. So we both have our real actual stories, but there is also this kind of vast, beautiful, possible history. And of course, it's a lot of pain with the crime of slavery, but there is also accompanied by the beauty of humans meeting and finding each other and creating families and creating visions and hope for the future. And not only a struggle and not only a survival, but also being creative, being innovators and dreamers, and hoping for a future for themselves and for the children that will come. So when I grew up in my home, there was a lot of reflections and talking about social justice and so on. This was in the 70s and early 80s. Both my parents were very politically involved. And we were living in Uppsala in Sweden, but we also had this kind of Canadian identity, very active, having contact with our relatives in Montreal. Growing up in Uppsala in this family with my mom and dad in the 70s and 80s was very, me as an individual, I was very clear in a way where I was coming from. And as I grew up, I come to know more about our background and of course the tragic parts of the history, this part with slavery. And I think me and many of us that have the same history, I mean, we cannot just stay in that story and that actual happening. So for me in my 20s, when I started making art, not my first years as an art student, but after a while, I became really fascinated by both Black archives that I found. Maybe in the beginning, a lot of history of people with biracial background, and then coming into more and more of this not only the history of what you call it, the Black American history, but more different Afro diasporas and their interconnection. And I have always felt that I want and need a place for my heart and soul to be able to not only grieve but also honor ancestors that I maybe will never know who they are, but that I carry within myself. So when being invited to this exhibition, this possibility, there are many different threads that are being suddenly, they are meeting each other, being knitted together. Yeah, this was supposed to be about my background and presenting myself, but yeah, there are many layers. In a way, I'm just a Swedish woman living here during the pandemic, trying to stay alive. But that's just one part of me. I think the identity as a Black or brown person has always been, it's always been something I've been honoring, but at the same time, always not struggling, but working on finding this kind of position in Swedish society. Trying to find ways, both through my art and in my private life, to let the surrounding know that me and us, we are coming from a rich history, a beautiful realm of stories and spirituality, and that we are here both as persons that bring a past with us and rich experiences, and that we are looking into the future. Yeah, let me end with those words because I can elaborate too much.
No, but that's really beautiful and a wonderful way to begin. And I kind of feel like as a collaborator, but also as a sort of, I don't know how we would describe, because I think the word collaboration feels very sterile in some respects, because it makes it seem as if our relationship is just kind of strictly professional. But I don't know, there's something really special that happens when two women of African descent come together to do anything, actually. So my feeling is that in this dialogue, this long dialogue that we've been having for, let's say, a year and a half, maybe longer, right? Our ancestors maybe have been conversing before we arrived.
Yes. Yes.
So my feeling is that, you know, we also share, I feel like in the meeting between us, we also share ancestors. So I share my Nigerian ancestors, my Sudanese ancestors. I share the ancestors who went to Brazil and then returned back to Nigeria.
Wow.
Right, in the late 19th century, and then created a sort of Brazilian enclave in Lagos. I share those ancestors. I share the ancestors of what we know of as grey horse breeders who came somewhere from the Sahara and arrived closer towards the coast, right? So there's this internal. I also share, in the same way that you too have a journey that brings you to Sweden, but also brings you to these questions. I also share another kind of migratory journey, and, you know, on the backs of two Nigerian artists who traveled and left home to make a home for themselves outside of home, and then has children outside of, and what does that mean? So I think there's something really beautiful about coming together to talk both about what makes us connected, but also about all those other journeys that our lives and our spirits have taken to be in this space and time. Yeah. And something that that I think is, you know, I have this image that I wanted to share in this introductory section of this woman from the archive, unknown woman, photographed by an unknown photographer with no date. It's a canotype that's in a collection in New York. I'm just thinking about all of these unknowns, and yet still this woman is here, right? Still she offers herself as a subject in the photograph, but also to be seen across space and time. So I think there's something very powerful in that recognition, though there are so many unknowns. Yeah, so that's why I think that the way in which you introduced yourself is very powerful, because it points to some of these questions that, you know, so many people in the modern world are grappling with in different kinds of ways. Yeah. I hear the kids in the background.
What did you say? That
I hear the kids in the background having a good time.
There is due to certain circumstances I cannot be indoors today, so I'm on the patio, and there is what you call it, the place where children eat their lunch when they have the break from school, and they have some food in the house just next to my patio. But I love this photo both because it's a cyanotype, but and this beautiful lady, but I'm in the presence when she's looking at us, you know. It's beyond space and time. It's she's so here and now, in this connection with the eyes. Beautiful.
Yeah. So let's talk about this exhibition, which you know, I guess we hoped that there would be lots of bodies moving through this exhibition over the course, but of course here we find ourselves in pandemic life being
Yes.
So, but let's talk a little bit about the exhibition and how it came into being, and also maybe take some few steps around some of the projects that you've been working on, and some of the images that you've been creating in this world, in the Dreamkeeper exhibition.
Yeah.
I guess we should start by honoring another ancestor, Langston Hughes, who is the reason why we have come together to do this project. I initially approached you a year and a half ago, now more, to talk about this poem, which arrived by way of different circumstances. I was doing some work on children's books, and then this poem sort of intervened in my research process in another context. And just these words really touched me somehow. They sort of grabbed me in the heart, and they really asked me to think about what is it that we are doing with this space, the spaces that we have to share our knowledge, share our experiences, educate, produce culture. How can we create environments for people to heal and to thrive in some very challenging times? And I think the more and more we meditated on this poem, The Dreamkeeper from 1932, the more the world was kind of showing us the need for what Langston Hughes was kind of writing into being. When he says, "Bring me all your dreams, you dreamers. Bring me all your heart melodies, that I may wrap them in a blue cloud cloth, away from the too rough fingers of the world." So this was a call. This was my call to you as an artist. I knew you had many different kinds of interests. We'd had conversations about your interest in ethnobotany, which I know you're going to talk about, and healing and medicine, and what it means to kind of do social justice work in a Swedish context. But maybe you could speak a little bit about what this provocation of the poem and the Dreamkeeper meant to you, and how it sort of unfolded in your mapping of the exhibition.
There were, first of all, it was meeting this poem for the first time, and also Langston Hughes that I only heard about. That was a big thing. I started reading a little bit more about him and his life, and the poem in itself. It talked to me instantly, because dreams are always present as a kind of, both being an artist, having that possibility in the way you work with actually manifesting or materializing dreams. And that this is an invitation for me to allow myself to also focus on our dreams, as in black and brown dreams. That this poem, and you inviting me with this poem, allows you invite and create that space, allowing this to just be a sacred space for our dreams. And there were many things going on in my life when you called me, and you sent me this poem, and I was, at the moment then, I was very much into growing different blue flowers in my allotment. So this, and I was also having a plan of coloring different cloths and fabrics in this kind of blue, different blue botanical dyes. And that was also for me not only Afro-diasporic ethnobotany journey, but it was a journey of getting closer to that specific West African indigo blue cloth that I once grew up with, but somewhere it got lost. I have another fabric that I many times wear around my neck that is also colored. It has the same color as this specific fabric, but it's actually a lost fabric, very beautiful West African, maybe Nigerian, indigo blue cloth that I immediately connect this poem to, because it was actually as a blanket thing in my parents' sofa when I grew up. It was often there when I was watching TV. So I had a very personal connection with this poem, this actual fabric that made me feel safe. But of course, this poem is so much more than this personal experience. What I connect with very much is this writing of like, yeah, let this cloth protect you from the rough fingers. Because since 2016, when I broke up from a performance piece that I used to do, and I started embracing our fragility and our not need, but yeah, that we should be treated as gently and tenderly as anyone else. This has become very much, it's an important thing for me, allowing oneself to be fragile, or to say that I need you to be soft and gentle with me, as a kind of trying to perforate and take away this kind of stereotyping of Black people, that they are robust and that they can be treated in a very harsh and uncaring way, and they will still stay alive. This poem is saying that we need this blue cloud cloth that like protects us and takes us away from these rough fingers. So it's an actual, it's a kind of magical, what do you call it? When you say something as a magician and you...
It's like an invocation. Actually.
Yes, yeah. So so those last words in the poem connects very much to my earlier work, what I already had begun. So the moment I got this, I felt, yes, of course I'm going to work with this. Yeah.
And I mean, thinking about where your creative mind went once because when you have a solo show, it's kind of different when you're conversing with other artists, there's more framework, but you could travel, you could basically do many different kinds of projects. We knew, for example, that you'd been working on some sketches for some photographic projects, a photographic series on Black people sleeping. So we knew that was a project that would unfold in this. Maybe tell us a little bit about where else your mind was going when you were thinking about this space that this Dreamkeeper exhibition could create.
Because the dreaming connecting to sleeping, that was one path, like you said, and then of course it was the blue color that was very inviting, and the blue color for me, it's both the sky and the sea. It's the color of waters, of course, and the limitless sky. So this limitless sky is both a place for dreams and visions and the Afrofuturistic kind of setting that everything is possible. And the water is, I mean, this is what I love with sky and water. When you see them from a certain perspective, they melt into each other and become one. So if the water is both the past, it can be both the place where some of my ancestors are resting in the bottom of the ocean. So it's a place where I can grieve and I can honor them there, at the shore of a vast ocean. But the ocean and the waters are not only a sad place, they are also a place for this limitless journeying. Not only the forced journeys, but also this real feeling of traveling one's the paths of one own's choice. So waters in their liminality, fluidity are also very, for me it's a dreamscape. It's this kind of soft waves and water flushing. It's a very hypnotic, sensual, physical experience. So yeah, the blue color connected to this, the potential of sky and water becoming this landscape of the Afro diaspora and Afrofuturism, connecting history with the present and the future. And in the beginning, I was planning for the exhibition to focus more on the these plants that I was investigating at the moment in the beginning. So it started out as an indigo path, going into these indigo plants and what they created. But that specific path in the art project went into this photographic technique called cyanotype, and I heard that you pronounced it cyanotype. I don't know the actual English pronunciation.
It's the word we want.
Yeah, I say cyanotype, and it's I think it's 150 years old technique it's actually not a photographic technique. It's actually the technique for printing your negative. So instead of having silver in your photographic emulsion on your photo paper, you have the cyano chemicals that are made of iron and another chemical. And when you mix those and you have this fluid connected to these powders, you put it on a paper and it dries, and then you can put your transparent negative and you use the sun and you put this out under glass in the sunlight, and that creates the picture. And then you just wash it in water in this also fluid connecting to water again, and then you have the print there. So it captures a very beautiful blue color. Actually, cyanotype can create many different types of blue, going from indigo into cobalt blue and more cerulean blue. So for me as an artist, it's very inspiring seeing these different blue tones. And it's also something I think maybe there is a dimension, not all of the photos in the exhibition, but a few, maybe 3 or 4 portraits of people are made with this cyanotype technique. And in a way, I love the way it transforms a person also beyond whiteness or blackness. You become blue, there is a spiritual dimension, leaving those bodily. So that's one aspect. Yeah, I was really, it was hard navigating in the beginning. Where would this project go? Because it was so inviting to experiment and discover new places. But when I'm looking at this mind map that I did in the beginning, what does it say? It's into these colors and paths, because I had in this blue botanical colorants, the blue different types of indigo that you can create fabric dye for fabric. I was also interested in the plants themselves. Not all of the plants that give indigo color are blue themselves, but some of them are, and the flowers. And that connected me to me being interested in the color blue in flowers, no matter if they dye blue or not. So a few years before me starting on this project, I was getting information about the blue periwinkle as a plant being used by enslaved Africans in the Americas. So we're talking now about a tradition that maybe started 250 years ago, I think. There are no proof of this, but there are, well, if I explain it like this, people who do ethnological and anthropological work today, or I mean, this comes from people knowing of these traditions for a long time.
Oral histories and
oral history, exactly. So in these cemeteries, places where you bury your loved ones, in the Americas, in North America, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, many times Black people were not allowed to put up a cross or a stone that were telling who were lying there, buried. But then in many areas of the South of the United States, you find this specific plant, the periwinkle, and the specific one that has a blue flower. And when you find this plant, you many times find that these persons are buried there. So these are the something that people planted and put there
to mark the ancestors' presence.
Yeah. When you couldn't put up anything else, you were not allowed to. At least you could put this plant there. So for me, this plant becomes this both actual physical sign of ancestors, but also a very metaphorical and beautiful, poetic way of thinking about these roots of the plants going down to the ancestors, and then the plants still being alive, still flourishing or being alive and growing. And when they bloom, they create this beautiful blue flower. So that blue periwinkle flower, that connects me also to the indigo and to the water, color of sky and water. That is the history and future. So from that kind of linking these aspects together, I had this interest for paths, both actual geographical paths and journeys, but also paths that are between the living and the dead. So it's not only me honoring the dead, but also transporting myself between living and dead, and honoring them. So in the exhibition space, we also find this path of periwinkle that is the road to ancestors. Yeah, and that brings us into
The world.
other worlds.
Because it's so great,
Yes.
it's so wonderful to hear you talk in a bit more detail. I think also for people who may have entered the space to sort of understand all that brings you to the sort of threshold of the exhibition, if you will, so that when they see this path of periwinkle weaving its way through the space, there's also an understanding of like all the history, the stories, the memories that comes with that.
Yeah.
And I think what was interesting also dialoguing with you was the kind of, as your thinking unfolded and your sketches for the different projects that you wanted to manifest in the space, it became, I think this is when we became clearer in understanding that this was a kind of world, a future worlding experiment, worlding in the sense that sort of creating environments and possibilities for other ways, like other methodologies, other possibilities. And of course, in the context of the exhibition, it was about plants, of course, and water, but then of course the dreams and the scent worlds, which I know you're going to go on to talk about in a minute. But in a way, all of these different worlds, the sort of ethnobotany, the medicinal plants, the water, the dreams, and the scent worlds, which are connected back to the plants, you know, there's a sense that they all feed each other and they all kind of produce an archive of knowledge and experience. That we can draw on. I think that's the thing that I learned from dialoguing with you, is that, you know, you saw this very practically as
I do. I can just go briefly into what plants mean for me, because plants are both what they are living beings, and they contain a lot of way they function, but they are filled with this fantastic, what you call them, I mean the biochemical aspects of plants and the sophisticated way they have administered their own chemistry to stay alive and to bloom, and it's so intricate, and we can learn so much from plants no matter what our heritage is. The plants are really, I mean, we as humans, when we started walking this earth, before we had all what we have now, there was plants. I mean, that was our way of connecting to this place, as food, as medicine, as allies,
as shelter,
material. Yeah, it's everything. So for me, the plants, they have the potential of being medicine, being food, being things that we can create materials, fabrics from. They are food for the animals we might need to have around us. They have their own beauty that they bring to us. But in the midst of all this, they are not only symbols, they are really carriers of knowledge, tradition, stories. And they, for me personally, they almost have their own spirit. So what I was saying is that plants for me, they have this kind of multitude of their own functions and their different roles for us as humans. And for me, they bring the connection of this kind of sometimes not lost history, but when I cannot really put my finger on a map and say my ancestors come from this place, I can through the plants still get a notion of they might have been using this plant, or when I'm eating this dish that contains okra or something else, maybe or perhaps my taste buds are experiencing. It's very healing to have the more knowledge I get on plants and the Afro-diasporic ethnobotany, and the different healing plants, both from the African continent but also from the New World. The more knowledge, the more experience, the more I start to grow them and use them in my life, the more I connect to ancestors, and I also connect myself to a larger collective. So they are crucial for me in the way I perceive myself as a person, but also how I, through them, know how it's the importance for us as humans to fight also for the survival, not only of the planet, but protecting nature. And that really grounds me and heals me. So the plants have a multitude of aspects of healing that they bring forward. So the periwinkle path, when the blooms are alive or are in their like most heightened, intense blue, at the moment the periwinkle path is very green. I hope that when we go into the summer, hopefully the blue flowers are starting to pop up, and that will in a sense create this kind of metaphor for a water stream. It's in the exhibition space. The periwinkle path is a curved shape that also wants to resemble a waterway. So here we can see this kind of long shape going through the room. Yeah.
Right
And
now, through the window, this is what you can see if you're looking through the window of Watchaka Constel.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what would be nice now is if you just give us a kind of a quick tour around the main themes and projects of the exhibition, just so, I mean, I think you've beautifully spoken about what inspires you and your research. And I think it's important, like spending some time on that research dimension, because I think you spent, I mean, you're a specialist. I mean, you really know about these plants. This is something that is really much like genealogy. It's kind of life's work for you. So
yeah,
I really appreciate you also sharing your knowledge and your wisdom about these plants and how they connect to different histories. But if for an audience who may not necessarily get the chance to come to Stockholm or to Fittja, just to give us a sense of what we experienced through the exhibition. So I have a few photos to help us. So maybe we'll start with the periwinkle path. You've spoken a little bit that moves through the exhibition.
Exactly. Here we see the periwinkles coming up, and they are going to be accompanied by on the side, on one side in the back of this plant installation, we have a smaller wall painted in gold. And this wall has the color gold continues also in footsteps, 2 footsteps coming out from the wall on the floor. And through some workshops with children, we also hope that these footsteps will travel along the inner circle, inner curve of the periwinkle path. That is to show how the plants of the ancestors go alongside the footsteps of our future generations, into the future. And the golden wall, I don't think we have a picture of the golden wall, but I want to mention it.
Yes, please mention it.
Yeah. The golden wall is the part of the exhibition that for me is the starting point. Here we can see a picture of this golden wall that I'm kind of collected, what can I say? The golden color is there as a kind of a way of honoring ancestors, but also ourselves. It's a symbol. It's a very metaphorical color. This wall has a few watercolors that has the color red in them. These are abstract watercolors, and they are created from a very deep thought of me trying to find a way to portray, or trying to find a place to let my soul rest in a kind of visual world for my grief and my honoring of ancestors. Because I come back to this, that when we honor our ancestors, we also honor ourselves. So these abstract blue landscapes, they are in a way pictures of an ocean, of a sea, of a water. And the red color is the symbol of blood. And we see this blood in all of the pictures except for 3 of them on this golden wall. In the upper right corner, we see a framed one, a watercolor that is a little bit bigger, and that is called Cloud Cloth, and that was made from a thought of how could this blue cloud cloth both behave in the air, or how could it look. So this wall is a place of remembrance, of honoring. The golden wall is a place to really allow us to stand there for a minute or 2 or an hour, and if we want to, we can meditate. We can take a chair and we can sit there and we can meditate, and we can connect to ancestors. The plant in front of the golden wall is a fragrant dracaena, and the dracaena plant you can meet in different countries: Gambia, Ghana, Nigeria, and further down along the West African and Central African coast. And these dracaenas are many times included and placed in sacred groves, or you take them in as potted plants, where you have ceremonies and rituals. There are sometimes used as plants that you pour libations on, and libation is a tradition of pouring water or some other fluid as an offering and as a way of connecting to ancestors. Sometimes it can be used as that, as a technique to connect. So this plant is here as a connection to ancestors. So in the future, there will also be water that you can pour there if you choose to. So this is also a way how plants can work, not only as physical medicine, but a medicine for our spirits. The golden wall also has a little bookshelf. And this is a way for me to really try to allow us to connect the past to our future. So if the past brings a lot of pain and grief, these books are there to remind us about a future. There are book titles that talk about Black imagination and therapeutic yoga and things that are addressed for people with the Black and brown experience. And I really wish to invite people to stand there, look through the pages, get inspired. It's between the political and poetic, this literature that I have chosen for this little bookshelf. So from this golden wall and its landscape of ancestors, it connects to other watercolors that we can, yeah, there is also one there in the middle with red, and that one is connected to the other ones that are also ancestors' blood in the water. The watercolor technique, I use it both on graphic print paper and on watercolor paper. We see a large picture that is with double portraits on each side. You see a man's face, a profile. It's made in the cyanotype technique. So the blue color comes from this cyanotype. And it's a portrait of my father. And he's closing his eyes. He's in a deep meditation. And this painting and photo combined is called, now you have to help me, Temi, because maybe I'm saying the wrong thing. If it's delta, alpha, theta. Do you have the?
I think aren't those the waves? Yes, I think they both have waves. The waves to the right hand side, you can see the watercolor at the bottom, and then also the watercolor at the top. Yeah. I'm talking about the one in the top where you can see the profile of my father's face. Yes.
That one has the title, I think it's delta alpha theta or alpha delta theta. I'm not sure, but in some order.
Yes.
So these are the names of the different brain waves that you come into. Your brain starts to, when you meditate, when you rest, when you get in deep relaxation, your brain waves change. And you can also, in this state of mind, access a kind of realm of lucid dreaming, expanded consciousness. So this is an invitation for us to allow ourselves to rest, to meditate, to expand in our visions and in our mindscape. And we have, the other ones that you were talking about, the ones that are not horizontal, but the other way, yes, down in the corner. That picture is called sargassum, and that's the name of a specific seaweed that you only find in the Sargasso Sea. And the Sargasso Sea it's a very huge geographical place called the Sargasso Sea. But the part of the Sargasso that interests me is the part that connects to the Caribbean Sea and the Caribbean islands. The Sargassum seaweed, it has different aspects, both good and bad. And what happens with it sometimes is when it starts to decompose and starts fermenting on the bottom of the sea, it can create a gas. And those kind of gas bubbles, they can sometimes burst into kinds of small explosions. And there are theories that this sargassum seaweed gas can actually be one of the answers to some of the accidents.
Yeah, the ship
in the Bermuda,
in the
Bermuda ships,
Triangle.
exactly. Yeah. In the Bermuda Triangle, exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, the sargassum seaweed is also, it's not a sacred place, but it's I can sometimes fantasize about this very thick, being in that ocean, almost lying on the bed of the seaweed that carries me, and also feeling, because yeah, the sargassum piece connects to the piece that we see just a little bit of, triangles like pyramids. That painting is called Dark Bermuda, and that connects, the title connects to my own personal fantasy or mythology, or I don't know how to say what it is really, but since I was a child, I was curious about, what is this Bermuda Triangle? What is this? I was fascinated, and first I was a bit scared. My grandmother, my white grandmother, read a book about the ship that was lost in the Bermuda Triangle, and I was like, wow, what is this? And then when I became a teenager, this place that is in itself like a bit borderless, where does the Bermuda Triangle really starts and ends? It became a place, almost like a safe place. It was transported in my mind into a realm that I could feel was a safe haven, like no one can hurt me inside of the Bermuda Triangle. I'm protected by this invisible force that I don't know what it is. Then I didn't know about the sargassum and that theory, but the Bermuda Triangle, it was very abstract, it was very mysterious, it had its own dark beauty, this kind of storytelling. But it was connecting already then, as a young teenager, to that feeling maybe as a minority in my surrounding, being a brown person and carrying my history, and sometimes feeling not always welcome in Swedish society. Then I had this kind of Bermuda Triangle zone that I would step into and feel protected. So Dark Bermuda for me is that painting. It could also be called Dark Bermuda, protecting me at night, because it feels, I feel protected by it. So for me, Dark Bermuda is not a negative title. It's something very, it's both lush and very much there and protective. Yeah.
It's interesting because you've spoken a lot about these spaces of protection and recovery, these spaces that you can retreat to, either to restore oneself or to sort of like Langston Hughes say, like to be away from the too rough fingers of the world. And you do that so beautifully in your paintings and your kind of mixed media, cyanotype and watercolors. But then at the same time, you also do that in this series of portraits, which are the kind of window through which this whole dream world unfolds around it.
Yeah, the sleep is I mean, to dream, we can go into deep meditation and we can sit on a chair, in a chair, and be relaxed, and we can get these delta waves going and alpha waves going, and we can access the dream world. But another place to dream is when we actually sleep. And I'm very interested in sleep. It's the place where we allow ourselves to lose control and sleep. From looking from the outside, sleep, it mimics death. It's like, for a moment, the body resembles of someone dead. So it's a very, when I go into the sleep zone, I go there on very gentle feet with very soft steps. Through my earlier work as a performance artist, working with performance art, for a long time I was doing a series of performance where I was carrying people and I was using my body in all its power, using my strength, investigating stereotypes, using it as a tool. And then in 2016 there came a point where my body, it really had become weak, and both through specific health situations, but also maybe just getting older and becoming a mother, a parent, and I wasn't as strong anymore, and I was going to do this performance piece again, and I just suddenly I came in contact with my own weakness. And that was the turning point. That is actually why I'm here now. Because that opened the door, that failure opened the door to a whole new realm of healing. And that was when I also started to address this desire to be fragile as a Black woman, to allow myself to want to be treated gently. So, to connect this to sleep, I started investigating a whole new field of performance art where I embraced the weaknesses and started looking also at Black public health. And there, me becoming really distressed when I could see the unequal, this imbalance between in societies that have a white majority. I could again and again see in the statistics that the black public health was often, there was often a lot of stress that created heart problems and higher blood pressure and many other by effects of this kind of I don't know what to call it in English, minority stress that is part of what structural racism creates.
Yeah.
So for me, it became obvious that, okay, if we are victims of this kind of structural racism that creates the minority stress, that is the stress that eats up our bodies and change our hormonal systems and creates heart problems, that means that we need more rest and more sleep than the average person. So sleep became a place, its own landscape, a path into both public health, resilience, self-care in its deepest meaning, and sleep became also a path to resistance, like resisting this structural racism and also resisting, in a broader sense, resisting global capitalism and global economy that is still colonial in many parts of how it behaves in the world and how it administers everybody's bodies and how we're
also
all
how it
supposed
extracts, it's extractivism as well. Yeah,
exactly. So sleep is since 2016, sleep has been central in my, it's a very big, it takes a big space in my thought process. How can we do it? How can we show it? How can we both do it in art but also do it in in our real lives, in a reality where we might actually not have that time or that economical circumstances that creates the possibility to sleep in a deep and totally relaxed way. So I had been writing 2016 articles about this, and in 2019 that was the first time that I started taking pictures, first with a digital camera. That was a series of sketches that I took of Black and brown friends and family sleeping and resting. and then suddenly, yeah, and that was where you got to see one of the pictures and you contacted me. So these sleep portraits, they are really one of the most important things that maybe in the future I will continue further investigating this. When I started investigating sleep and sleep as self-care for Black and brown people, I also came across some fantastic individuals working with this already as an activism. We have the poet, activist, and community healer. Her name is Trisha Hersey.
The Napping Street, yeah.
Yeah, am I pronouncing it right now?
Yes, you are. Yeah,
her name.
Yeah.
So Trisha was a big inspiration. That was the first time I saw that other people are already working with this. They are creating collective performances and collective spaces where they rest together, they sleep together, and also Black Power Naps, an initiative from I think Fanny Sousa, and you must remind me of the names because
yes,
I list them.
Navid, Fanny Sousa, and Navid Costa.
Yeah, Costa.
We have the slide later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I found
Navid
those
Acosta.
two.
Navid Acosta.
Yeah. Those people that were already into deep sleep activism were a big inspiration.
Yeah.
So the challenges for me creating those photos has been that sometimes I feel that, oh, they resemble death too much. But there is something with this, again, connection to ancestors that are dead but are alive in us. So death is not the ending. Death is also filled with life. So if you interpret this as dead bodies, that's one thing. It's not supposed to be interpreted that way. But for me, death is not the end, and death is filled with life force. But the sleep is the most healing place, and of course sleep can be a place for nightmares or worried sleep, but I really want to invite us to remind us and remember that we are allowed to sleep, and that we are very much not only allowed, we are really the ones that should have this in our life, this rest and sleep, and feel totally allowing ourselves to abundantly give us sleep. The pictures are taken with a large format camera, and the way I've been trying to, this is very interesting how I got to get about this, the way of how they have become these pictures, because from the beginning I wanted to create just a very clean cut series of Black people sleeping, but when I started working with my models, the people in the pictures, I really didn't want that kind of just very clean and easy way.
Yeah, direct gaze.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when you come into the exhibition room and you see those little pictures, you also get the sense of that someone has been cutting and doing things with the negatives, with the material. You get this kind of feeling that, oh, this might have been done in a dark room in the 80s, very analog copies that have sometimes almost they have a very homemade feeling. And I work both with secondary negatives that I do double copies, and I get a negative that I can cut and manipulate, and I can glue them together. Sometimes they are put on top of each other, the different negatives in this large format. So this picture that we see, it is actually 3 negatives put on top of each other. It's the same photo session, and it's my foster brother's wife. This is a moment when she has come home from her job in the hospital in Uppsala, and she has been working a long, for many hours. So she's very tired, and because of Corona, and because I'm a risk group person, we cannot go inside. I think this is in November, December sometime. We cannot go inside into their flat. Instead, we have to make a bed outside in the playground, outside the house, on a bench. So we create this bed. And it's coming these snow, rain, dripping things from the sky. And I have to cover my camera. And she has to have like an umbrella, and then she's lying there, and I start taking pictures, and her son is holding something to protect her, and I have my black fabric, because this is a real old type camera, and it's very dark outside, and we try to see something. And then it continues, and me taking photos, and she falling asleep, very tired from the working hours. So this is a metaphysical picture almost of pretended sleep and actual sleep, then in these negatives combined into this portrait that is beyond what there actually is. So I'm very interested in this, when you can use very old and analog photo techniques, and you can create other dimensions. Yeah, this is what I have to say. I could elaborate a lot on this topic, how to use analog photo, almost like a way to access a realm beyond time and space. Again, I reconnect to this older portrait that we saw, the lady in the cyanotype, maybe 150 years ago, sitting there and looking at us, how present she is. And there is something with analog photography that never ends to fascinate me. This depth of the captured time.
Yes.
It's something very magical and mysterious.
It is, and like you explained before, and when you think about also the process of now bringing the print into being, and this constant immersion into different chemicals, but also into water as well. So there is a sense that the image is always in emergence, because you then try to reprint this photograph, something else is going to happen. It's not the same image, literally. So I think this idea of images coming to emergence, of things moving across states, across affective states, across time and space, I think is really coming through very strongly in your practice. Yeah. Let's move on to another. Oh yes, we can talk a little bit. I won't take this too long. This is the sort of magical entity in the show.
Yeah, and I think it's the magical key, to the key to history, and the key to so many things.
We managed to convince the Ethnographic Museum to lend us a sacred sleep object for the exhibition. And it is, that in itself is kind of magical for those who know the museum world. It's not easy asking museums to share things and move them across town to a place that has, different conditions. So this has been really wonderful. And we've had a wonderful team at Botkyrka Konsthall who've made this happen. And it is, in a way, in the exhibition, I mean, this is a very wonderful zoom in image, but of course it's surrounded by what can only be described as a fortress, a museum fortress, which is a vitrine. But the object is really here also as a way to, again, bring archive into the exhibition and to resignify an object that's sitting in a collection that has a long and very layered colonial history. We know that this object passed through many missionary and other colonial hands. So it's not clean, historically speaking. However, I think when we bring these kinds of objects into new conditions, into new conversations, into new perspectives, those histories are there, but they also offer their original intention, which was to protect the head, to offer the head a place to rest in a comfortable way and also in an ergonomic way. And just to allow for African people to just be, really. So it's a liberatory object. You know, a farmer would have a headrest, a king would have a headrest. You'd walk around with your headrest because it's very small, portable. And then when the midday sun comes, you would just lie down and put this under your neck and take a nap. So I think as both a very portable object, but also as something that connects to the bigger history of, you know, African-centered perspectives on the head as a seat of power, of knowledge, where dreams enter. Of course, all of that is embedded in this beautiful object. So it's great to have the presence in the exhibition.
Yes, it really brings something into the space. Also connecting the past and the future. And the vitrine is a fortress. It's mind-blowing how small this object becomes in this huge vitrine, but still it's so powerful in its presence in the space. So we invite everybody to come and see this.
Yes, peep in through any window, even outside. So talk to us a little bit about your olfactory works, because another aspect of your work is about perfumery and scent and travel. So talk a little bit about this.
Yes, I will try to do this very brief. It's very important to know that this is not perfumery in general. This is botanical perfume. So that connects us directly to the botanical realm and the ethnobotany that I have as a continuing path throughout the exhibition. All of these different small glass cloches that we see, when you lift them, you will be able to smell resins and oils and essences from a variety of plants. Most of them are from the continent of Africa. One or two is from the Caribbean, and one, the tobacco, is from Virginia in the States, America, USA. So you have Namibia, you have South Africa, you have Ethiopia, Somalia, the Karakarun, the flower from an uncertain place in West Africa that we don't really know where is it from. Madagascar, the vanilla, and the vetiver from Haiti, the specific Haitian version of vetiver that is softer and more sophisticated in my how I perceive it. And those different botanical essences, together they create this perfume that I gave the name Fog of Namib, because we have this plant called Bushman's candle from Namibia that you find in the desert, that is an important ingredient in the perfume, and that you can find underneath one of those glass cloches. So this Bushman's candle, that ingredient, inspired me to the name Fog of Namib. The Namib desert of Namibia, this specific desert, it has its own fog. It's actually, I think it's the only wet desert in the world. So during periods it's dry, like the usual desert, but then suddenly this strong humidity, this kind of mist or fog from the ocean, it sweeps through this vast sand desert, and everything becomes drenched in humidity and water,
Yeah.
and these very unique desert plants come alive, and everything is wet. So I'm super fascinated by that. In this perfume, I also put some ingredients that are not represented here as examples, like for instance seaweed. That for me it represents the Atlantic Ocean and the journey across the water. So one can say that this perfume is the actual Afro-diasporic journey. Different countries and continents connecting in this scent to the botanicals. So when you spray it on you, the actual plants penetrate your skin and you become in communion with the plants, and they are connecting us to history and to where we are now.
Yeah.
And because I'm interested in perfumery as a way we express ourselves as humans, but also the way we create narratives around perfumery. I'm very interested in breaking up the narrative that perfumery is something French, perfumery is something European, and something Western. I think many people know about Arabic perfumery and perfume culture of India, but not so much. There is not so much knowledge out there about the actual sophisticated perfume traditions of the people, the indigenous peoples of Namibia, for instance. They use certain soap myrrh. There is a certain myrrh tree that you can only find there, and then they combine the myrrh and this Bushman's candle and other very sophisticated scents that they create a traditional perfume with fat from animal, and this beautiful scent is used as a skincare and also like a ritual anointment. So there are some of the most ancient and oldest and most sophisticated and beautiful scent cultures and perfume cultures, traditions come from the African continent, and not only Northern Africa, but actually sub-Saharan Africa. And we must change our mindset and start thinking that yes, the history of perfume actually has much more diverse roots than the Parisian French narrative that we have learned. So this is a mission for me to let us start understanding actually both what the African materials with the African botanicals can create today, but also the history of perfumery, what it brings. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I love the way you talk about the way in which the scent penetrates the skin. I think that is a beautiful testament to this idea of borderlessness, right? You know, because I think in modern times, people try to hold on to their borders and think that their sort of skins are watertight and they don't, you know, that they're somehow very unique and isolated from the world. And it's like, no, everything affects, everything travels, everything influences.
Yes, and I can also quickly mention that for them of us that believe in that aromatherapeutic qualities are also available through plants, I can also say that the majority of the ingredients in this perfume composition are also materials that are usually brought into aromatherapy to create grounding, meditation, calm. So one can also see this in connection to the picture of my father meditating that I'm through this scent inviting us to stay grounded, stay calm, go into ourselves, into this introspection, and relaxation and resilience, and to be present, looking inwards in that kind of inward journey and richness that we carry.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Mm.
I guess you have to say a little something about some of the portraits that you have been producing in different formats in the exhibition.
Yeah.
Spend a bit of time.
Yeah, because there is not only analog and black and white photo and cyanotype, there is also these digital color ones. Here I'm visiting the botanical garden of Uppsala with a very good friend of mine, and we were there for a few hours. There has been certain circumstances because of the pandemic that made us not being able to be there for a long time, but we were there, and we were in a sense both discovering this place. I've been there many times before, but she lives in Stockholm, so this was her first time. And for me, it was also the first time I went into this space with a certain perspective and certain glasses on, because this is the part of the botanical garden in Uppsala that is called the tropical house. And in the middle of this house, there is this big round water container for these huge water living plants that become very large. I don't know the English name. And in the side rooms to this round space, there you have collections of plants from different tropical areas. So in the picture where you can see her looking, she's looking up, and we can see her through this lush vegetation. Then we are in the African section of this botanical garden. We were there for a long time, and knowing that some of these plants were brought to Uppsala like 300 years ago. So there is this kind of the colonial culture that, I mean, the transatlantic slavery, the creation of botanical gardens, they are all part of this colonial way of, for the Western world to handle the rest of the world, and to take control, and create its own structures, and to rename places and people, and renaming plants, and everything that already were there and had its own positions and names and so on were recategorized. So we are there in this African section, and I think when we were there that day, we weren't really we were just letting ourselves be there and relax. It's in a way not, I had my thoughts from the beginning of what I wanted to create, but and I had some titles also in the back of my head, but it wasn't like I'm telling you to stand here like this so that I will do exactly this picture. It was more like organically walking through the spaces. And that picture where we are in the African section, I call it panopticon because I'm very interested in this dynamic between both the white gaze and what it does to people, but also the different technologies of using plant life as something you use to hide. So there we have a larger picture that is called maroon technology activated. So for me, maroon technology is that one of their technologies that they embraced and that they were super sophisticated in was to hide and camouflage themselves with the help of nature. So the maroons, I invite anybody who wants to Google maroon, what it really what it is. You can find maroon cultures on Jamaica, in Suriname, and other places. And in a broader sense, they are people of Black descent, African descent, that managed to escape their the white people that tried to have them as slaves.
They
And
forcibly liberated themselves from enslavement and then found
exactly
ways to survive in very harsh contexts in the Caribbean and in South America, where most colonists just didn't want to go, actually.
Exactly.
It's too difficult. So,
and this thing to go into communion with that plant life, going into these places that you haven't been brought up in, or you don't really know it, but they very very much went into getting to know their surroundings and learning how to actually become one with the plants. There is a specific a kind of not interview with a maroon, but yeah, it is a writing that is very direct from a maroon telling his story of how he could become in communion with a specific tree and stand at the side or sitting up in the tree, in the crown of the tree, for maybe 2 days, not moving, and eating of the tree and just being there, becoming one with this plant, actually. And also in that way, what do you call it, being able to take control over the persons following him, and he being the one in power through this kind of way of hiding, and then surprising his followers, the people that were trying to find him and capture him. So this thing with being visible and invisible, to be seen, to be identified, or to camouflage oneself, and to have nature and plant life as allies, not only as food and or medicine, but actually allies as something that your body can find a place to rest for a moment, where you can just go into this greenery and not being seen by this white gaze that in that time actually wanted to enslave you or kill you and so on. This is a very violent, I mean, to regard plants as, yes, it's nice to have a plant in your window, a little flower, but plant can actually be the thing that keeps you alive. And suddenly we find some of these plants in this botanical garden, and they are incorporated in this kind of structure of Western science, or a scientific Western view. Yeah, I'm getting lost here, but it's very much this panopticon. That title is also saying something about seeing and being seen. And
but also what can be reactivated even within this organizing colonial structure. Still, those plants can offer possibilities.
There are 2 smaller pictures where she's wearing, my model is wearing, that's actually a cloth that I made blue myself with indigo in the 80s. So it's been bleached in the sun and washed over and over again, and it's very light blue now. And she's wearing this, and for me, when she's wearing it, I connect her to the goddess Yemaya. So I think that is the titles I gave those 2. It's Yemaya, resting or sleeping, and that her head, when she's lying there on this bench, there is also this specific plant. It's a parrot flower. It has a name. I only know in the Swedish concept of the name. And these seeds of this plant has, when I researched this plant, how it's been used in the New World by African descendants, the seeds are used as something you can take if you need to make an abortion. So they are also a way for women to choose how to live their lives and to be able to take control of a situation that they might not desire at the moment. And so this plant is protecting her head and she's resting. And on the other pictures, it's just a portrait of someone, for me, being very, not proud, but so very much in herself, regal. And the plant that she has next to her, and that is also a plant you can see in the portrait of her when she's standing looking forward to us. It is actually a small mango tree. And the mango tree is also in its more grown-up shape. We can find it in the Jamaican stories about the great kinda tree. I cannot pronounce it. The kinda tree, that is a huge mango tree that has its own mythology and own storytelling about Black people in Jamaica. So it's also for me a reference to this, a connection to that Caribbean part of my own history. And Jemaya is a goddess in the Afro-Caribbean religion. Now I'm trying to remember if it's Santeria or if it is...
Well, it's in the religions of the Yoruba religion of Ifa.
Yeah.
Traveled, of course, traveled and become...
Exactly.
Santeria,
because I think... Yeah, I think in Yoruba is the name is pronounced in another way. It has another... Yeah. And for me, Yemaya is connected to water. And I think I was like 14, 15. I have been writing to Temi about this experience. I was in a swimming pool in Uppsala with my school, and I was there after school, just lying in this water and drifting. I was lying on my back and my ears covered with water, and I was drifting in my mind, and I was actually there and then in this swimming pool in Uppsala, indoor pool. I was actually traveling into a landscape of Caribbean ancestors and into this also realm of this goddess. So I have only heard about her sometime in my life, but that was the first time she made herself present in a way. And I'm not I don't practice a specific religion, but this specific goddess, Yemaya, she has been during my life in different periods of my life. Me always, when I have had different traumatic experiences, a lot of death in my family, people dying, the way I heal is to take myself to a bigger water. And when I go into the water, I transform myself. And it's also this Yemaya power or energy that I connect with. So yeah, and here she is in this kind of botanical setting, but in my personal storytelling, it makes sense. Yeah.
So, of course, there are many different images in the exhibition, and maybe those sea memories and the women, they reappear in the exhibition through the video, taking our time. But I thought that maybe what we could do is go upstairs in the exhibition.
Yeah.
And just to talk about this other space that you've created in terms of the experience of coming to the exhibition. So there's a lot of images and experiences and scents and concepts and maps and journeys that one can take. You could keep coming back and have a different experience. But what did you want to do upstairs in this sort of archive space?
Yeah, the upstairs, it's really about archive. it's also the place where you can sit down and listen to my guided meditation that takes you into a realm of plants and meeting yourself and your own what you call it, your own personal narrative. So there are these chairs and the earphones, the ear, you can listen to the guided meditation. There they are, exactly. And on the side we have the portrait that you showed, Temi, because in this space we have put together both the meditation and also this actual archive space that is waiting to be activated. It's a herbal archive. It's both something that wants to become a community herbarium, where we hope now during Corona we will see what happens, but we hope to have at least 2 or more meetings where we talk about what plants can be in our lives, what it is. I mean, people can come in with their own experiences. What plants do I use? What do I bring with me from my journey? And what am I discovering now? And how do I use these things? What do I call them? So to try to build this herbarium, this collection of experiences and knowledges of plants that we all use. And I call it Flora of Botkyrka because I want to reach out to the local community. And this archive space, once they're up, is also slowly building up a collection of pictures, small watercolors, where I collect names and pictures of the specific plants that I also have collected in the first level on the ground floor. I have a table installation with different pots where I collected Afrodiasporic ethnobotany, the actual plants. And here we see one of the paintings of them. And these can be plants that one uses for healing, as medicine, for beauty or ritual. And it can also be plants that you use for food and cooking. So it's a very wide collection, really different kinds of plants. And the young lady in the photo, she is like a what do you call it in English? She actually lives in Uppsala here, but she represents a young person, a young lady in Botkyrka that has this kind of botanical collection in her home. This can be a person who collects the plants because she's curious just to see if she can grow them, or it could be that she has really chosen them specifically for different reasons. We don't know who she is or why she has collected these specific plants, but we can see that she's proud and she's beautiful and she has this collection of the growing living plants, and that kind of abundance. And we can see that it's in an apartment setting. We can see a little bit of her interior. We're in a small room.
She's like a
and the window is behind her. Yeah, it's a small botanical garden in someone's flat. And this, I want to show this because I mean, many people have this at home. They have this kind of, you come home to someone and they have like, wow, you have these plants here. And you get totally mesmerized if you're a plant lover like me. This is both the inspiration and invitation, a kind of also reference to art history of Western people in history portraying themselves with exotic plants, where they can sit in the midst of a collection of plants and look very much like they are in control of knowledge. so it was also a reference to that part of art history, of Western art history. And also these kind of, often in Renaissance, late Renaissance paintings, you see a man or a woman that they have a table in front of them. So it's also that reference to that part of history, when that era of Western discovery of the world started, and you can see these adventurers sitting at the table with that position, and looking a little bit tilted with their heads.
And I love the fact that she has the pineapple growing next to her, the pineapple being the queen, literal queen of the fruit.
Yes, yes.
And she looks very regal as well.
It is very regal. And I know, I'm trying to remember now, I think there is, if I might remember this wrong now, but I think there is actually, where both my Black grandmothers come from, Guadeloupe, that there is a certain ceremony for children with pineapples. I don't know the name of this ceremony, but I have seen pictures, and there is a lot of pineapples. And I love the way when it's living on the plant, how it's sitting there. And so we are in my model's actual room where she lives, and then we have chosen fabrics that are from, those fabrics are from Ghana. So it's bringing in this kind of Afrocentric realm into a everyday apartment in a flat somewhere in Stockholm, or it is in Uppsala, but it's in the fictive sense it's supposed to be in Botkyrka.
Okay, so it would be wonderful to hear you speak a little bit about some of the inspirations that bring you to this project. I mean, one of the things I was really awed by, but also really inspired by, was just how much research you had been doing, particularly around, medicinal plants, ethnobotany, and generally sort of healing strategies, particularly in the Afro-diasporic world, which of course spoke to me very, very deeply. So I just thought that we would maybe share some of these references and some of these inspirations, so others can also, explore and see where we go. So let's do a bit of journeying around the Afro-diaspora. Let's talk a little bit about Drexciya. Do you want to?
Yes. Drexciya is something that I think it must have been, can it be like, I'm trying to think now. I'm 46 now, so maybe I was in my early 30s. And I mean, music has been a big part of my life, always. And this genre of music was not something that I used to listen to actively, but I think it was through some kind of, maybe it was through a friend. It was a friend of mine who is a DJ that was talking about this group, Drexciya. So I started investigating, who are they? And I found this kind of mind-blowing, totally science fiction and Afrofuturistic fantasy realm, and very short about the mythology or the imagination of Drexciya. Drexciya is, what can you call it? A techno band, a music group.
Yes, the Detroit sort of like alternative techno music scene. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, Detroit. And the people in this group, they created not only fantastic music, but also they created a story built upon the history and the myth of all these people that got lost in the ocean. Because during the transatlantic slavery era, when Africans were put into the ships and transported to the new world. There was a lot of things going on, not only to actually carry their bodies to the other side of the Atlantic, but also all these kind of situations with food and water on the ships, but also with insurance policies for the white, the people owning the ships. And there were these rules of insurance that you could get money for the lives that were lost at sea. So sometimes it's really a painful and horrible part of my history that I don't even want to think about. But no matter what, if they were thrown overboard, as they actually were many times, or they were thrown overboard sometimes because of insurance, the greed of money, that the white ship owners wanted the insurance money, or because they were sick. The Africans were sick. They might be a old woman or an old man that were thrown overboard because they weren't healthy. Or there might be someone making resistance and provoking and creating uprising. They were thrown overboard. So throwing people over.
Some jumped as well. I mean, if you read Lada Equiano's autobiography, he talks several times about the desire to just like choose death over slavery.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, here comes water from my neighbor. Let's see. So this thing you mentioned, Temi, it's true. It has been existing, these cases of people choosing death before becoming enslaved. So there is a lot of ancestors on the ocean, and what Drexciya did, they created this imaginary world of especially mothers, pregnant women that were thrown overboard or jumping overboard. And in this kind of mythology or storytelling, the children that are born under the surface of the ocean, they have this remarkable capability of breathing underwater, and they become the grounding fathers and mothers of a new, I don't want to say a new race, but a new kind of people.
A new community.
They come from these mothers. They can breathe underwater, and they are free. That is very important. They are free, and they are creating. In these stories, they are creating this kingdom or this fantastic underwater world. So this story can both have the potential of these new people coming after their oppressors, claiming revenge. It can also be just a space where you are free and where you can thrive. It has so many different potentials.
Yeah, and I think that James Stinton and Gerald Donald, who are the two sort of very elusive figures behind Drexciya, that really wanted to stay away from being over-identified. I mean, so thinking about, back to the politics of visibility. I mean, there's a lot of like, music geeks out there who are really into the archive, to building an archive, because they didn't do many interviews and they were, as I said, they weren't really, they didn't enjoy publicity in that way.
No.
But what is clear also from looking at their album notes and things like that is that they saw this underworld civilization as really a place of borderlessness, actually. But then, like with this album, with the aquatic invasion, it's like, okay, what happens when they've armed themselves and now they're coming back? Because when they come back, they have these other powers, right? Because Drexciyans can breathe underwater, right?
Yes.
So they have human, but also mammalian and fish
Yeah.
potentialities, which make them sort of like superheroes in a way.
Superhumans with super physicalities and superhero qualities, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a very enriching fantasy. And in what I have done, I have painted 2 abstract watercolors that I call Map to Drexia. So it's my longing. Sometimes I have the desire to be there in that space, in that community of very powerful Black persons who are masters of themselves, who are inhabiting the sea and being, you know, like you said, borderless and totally superhuman and fabulous. And that is one of my desires sometimes.
Yeah.
But
of course, the music is also the map as well. That's so beautiful. It's like you're talking about the possibility and imagining a possibility to find your way to the actual civilization, which some others might also say, well, there's Drexians and then there's also the Atlantans as well. There's many underwater civilizations that are still out there. But then there's also the music itself, which allows you to travel. I mean, and it's one of the reasons why creating a Spotify playlist, which is everybody's more than welcome to sign up to, has been very important, because music has also been a way to travel to other dimensions and worlds through the creativity of Black radical producers of knowledge. So, okay, that's Drexia. And I guess, you know, to talk about the underwater world, one also has to talk about the actual work being done by marine biologists and deep sea divers and maritime archaeologists who are very diligently trying to explore and document the material remains of enslavement underwater. And Diving with Purpose is one of those initiatives that is also educating primarily divers of African descent to do this work of reclaiming history and heritage, but in the sea, which of course is a very important, an important ancestor archive for all of, you know, all of the African communities, wherever you find them. So tell us about Karen Rose.
Yes, she was the first Black herbalist that because I have this interest in plants and in herbalism. That is one part of my plant interest. And I was always getting her books as gifts on birthdays, but it was always white people writing these books. And I didn't know of any non-white herbalists until I was actively Googling Black herbalists, and I finally found Karen Rose. She has this fantastic apothecary in Brooklyn, in New York, and she's really what you call it, this powerhouse of social engagement and activism and inspiring people to different ways to heal and plant knowledge. She carries so much knowledge about herbs, plants, community. She gathers people around her to together investigate and treat ourselves with these herbs and plants that can heal, but also to create the community that heals, the community that is a medicine. So Karen Rose is one of the the persons that really inspired me to go on investigating and go on also, growing my own plants, getting my own allotment, continuing exploring. Fabulous person. And also, Adaku Uta and her colleagues creating this Harriet's Apothecary, that is also both a place for herbalism, but they also go into meditation and yoga and different modalities of healing. They are a black and brown collective. I think they are also based in New York.
They are, and they're also a space that, you know, is very open to all the different dimensions of being. So they're supportive for queer and trans folks and people, all sorts of people who they want to hold in this healing space.
Yeah, such great, you know, to find these persons, these women, these individuals that carry so much knowledge and so much engagement for their communities. I mean, in my dreams, this is something I desire that we could create here in Sweden. So we'll see what happens.
Indeed. And you know, what's beautiful about Harriet's Apothecary is that Harriet Tubman is also listed as like one of the founders, right? So the ancestor is also part of the making of these initiatives, the bringing of this community together. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They been calling themselves Harriet's daughters also, I think.
Yes.
In some text or somewhere.
Yes. And then, but I also think that then there is another set of people who are also inspired by Harriet Tubman. As daughters of Tubman. Yeah,
she is a great inspiration.
Yeah.
So all these and there are so many other now blooming black and brown herbalists, male and female and non-binary, that are coming forward. There is really a big shift in herbalism at this moment. People that are questioning the colonial aspects of herbalism. So there is an interesting future for us to look forward to.
And then, of course, you know, plants. I think it's amazing. I can remember my mother sending me a WhatsApp in 2016 about this modern slavery garden. She was like, oh, there's a Black woman and she's created a garden in Chelsea. Because the Chelsea Flower Show, just like you were talking about Paris and the botanicals, the Chelsea Flower Show is kind of coded as a middle to upper class white space, right? So it was like a revelation that this woman, a Black woman gardener, designed this modern slavery garden, which wasn't just thinking about the sort of history of enslavement and abolition. There's an oak tree in the middle of the garden. And so that oak tree is a kind of response to the oak tree that William Wilberforce was sitting under when he decided to sort of, you know, push the charge for the abolition movement. But then she's also bringing it into the present day. She's thinking about current modern day enslavements and how people are still without rights. And trying to, you know, these doors kind of representing all the different ways in which activism happens outside in public space, but also behind closed doors. So I think Juliet Sargent's garden and then the modern anti-slavery rose that was developed as a result of this is very powerful.
This, I just remember that Juliet's project was something that I had read about when it happened, and then I lost it. So I just had the remembrance of there was this lady creating this fantastic thing, and then I lost it. So you are the one who are reintroducing it to me now. This was one of my inspirational, you know, in the beginning. Thank you.
And you're talking, it's precisely at that moment in 2016, you're talking about that shift that you were talking about before. So it's interesting the ways in which certain things are in the atmosphere.
Healing beginning.
Exactly. This is the modern slavery rose, which I think it was cultivated by a gardening specialist institute in Ireland called Dickinson, I think. So, and now they have this sign on their website. It's like, we're not giving you the roses until October because they come as like, you know, there's like a whole plan for this rose. So amazing.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. And Jerry Augusto.
This is really a very, what do you call it? It's both such a deep theoretical work, but also very spiritual and very, I mean, in with the senses. You can see and you can, I mean, you're not supposed to touch it, but it's very physical and very, for me, mind activating.
Yeah.
How she collects the things from the natural world in this kind of, because she's drawing upon this kind of Western, you know, this, from the era of discoveries. You
Yes.
collect things,
Yeah.
you put them in little wooden boxes and so on. But she goes a step further and she creates this for us.
Yeah, resignifies. And of course, Jerry Augusta has been, she's a professor at Brown University. And so she has been recovering and thinking about the archive of plant knowledge, medicinal knowledge, varying healing knowledges that have been transferred throughout enslavement and then after. So she has even built rather kind of cultivated a memory, a garden in memory of enslavement, but using very specific plants that would be part of, have you gone, Cecilia? One of the things that I think is really powerful about Jerry Augusto's work and her research is also the fact that she is reframing the way in which we think about these small plots of land that enslaved people created, that was sort of away from the main work of the plantation, these provision grounds or small plots, and really seeing them both as places where enslaved people were trying to nourish themselves in an environment that didn't want to nourish them effectively, but also seeing it as a kind of small space of liberation, where enslaved people could not only just kind of grow foods that worked for their constitution, but then could also like grow produce that then they would make a small amount of money from, and that could help them to sort of build some kind of agency in this really terrorizing context. So I think Jerry Augusto's work at Brown and rethinking like the provision ground as a space of liberation is so important. The NAP ministry, the NAP minister herself, Patricia Hersey.
Yeah, the NAP bishop. Yeah, this is the person whom I first came across when I started. I'm trying to remember now how I was so lost. What I mean is that I was very much alone here in a like Swedish art context. But this is not me saying that maybe there are other people working with these topics, but in the situation I was pretty isolated. So I didn't have a clue if anybody else in Sweden were interested in topics of brown and black people's rest, wellness, sleep, and so on. So I didn't have any Swedish correspondence with any person or anything. I was alone with my computer, and Google was like a vast ocean of possible knowledges about this. So I think I just started Googling Afro-Americans, Afro-diaspora, rest and sleep. And very soon I came across Trisha Hersey and her big project, the NAP ministry. What she does is to create these zones and spaces that are sacred, that are safe and protected, physical places with beds, several beds. I mean, this is pre-corona, so she has been going into beautiful places, putting out beds, mattresses, inviting communities to come, enter the space, use the space for rest and for sleep, collective sleep. And she's also I mean, this is her creating a community thing for the community, but it's also her acting as a someone carrying also this kind of knowledge and healing aspect. She's a ceremonial master or a healer.
Mm-hmm.
The activism is not allowed for activism. It's a very tender and nourishing activism where she creates this ritual ceremonial space, and she is the nap bishop in the midst of this, with her sense of poetics in creating space and context and the words and narratives around this. So I bumped into her on Google and I got like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. Yeah.
It's been amazing also listening to her speak, because she talks a lot about, as a theologian, talking about her experiences of being in graduate school and sort of just needing to rest from, the context in which she was doing her studies, but that seeming to be at odds with this kind of continuous productivity that was being sort of like promoted both in the learning academic space, but also in the world in general. I also really love the way in which she thinks and formulates rest also as a sort of counter practice to this larger organizing capitalist structure that is continuing to sort of take from you energetically, resource-wise, time-wise, in ways that actually just, like you say, run the body ragged. So no, I think hers is a really powerful practice. And I've been listening to a number of podcasts talking not just about rest, but also about, really pushing up against this notion of laziness, which has also been tied as an auto stereotype to African-American Black bodies, and saying, well, no, hey, I mean, actually us being here, us thriving, us surviving is work. Never mind the actual work that we're doing.
Exactly.
So really powerful work.
I have that. I think I have that kind of that stereotype about the risk of being that someone will view you as lazy. That has, I mean, I can feel that my father has been projected to this stereotype. I have also felt it. It's indeed something that we have to work around and allow ourselves this, and not see it as a kind of superficial luxury, but actually essential, and not only doing it for surviving, but also going deeper into the mysteries of sleep and having that aspect close to us, that is this not only contemplation, but actually before one really falls asleep, having that inward gaze, that we can really feel that we are carriers, holders of mysteries and knowledge. And with mystery, that word for me is a concept of the essences of existence, and all in our humanness that are not tangible and touchable. That is the spiritual realm. Introspection. She interrupts our daily lives that is structured by capitalism and productivity. She interrupts it and says, hello, let's lie down. It's so easy in a way, but it's so difficult to do it.
And of course, so many people are claiming this space.
Black power naps.
In literal ways, but also performative ways, because I think the performativity, which is also built into your own portraits, the actual need for rest in the bodies of the people who are represented, but also the performance of resting for a gaze, right? Whether it's a gallery audience or whatever,
Yes.
is in itself really an important way to sort of, you know, ask people, well, where is it that you stand in relation to my sacred rest? So yeah, Black Power naps. I think they've been in teen vogue, this group.
This is so fantastic.
Yeah.
I found out about them at the same days or week that I found about Trisha Hersey. I also found Black Power naps. And it's a queer collective, or it's Fanny Sousa and I always forget the second man.
Navila Costa.
Costa, exactly, yeah. Costa. So they are, like you said, this is a more performance approach, because when Trisha creates the sleeping sessions, it's for the community to come in and rest. And sometimes she creates visuals with a still photo, but it's not as performance oriented. It's more I'm not saying that this Black Power naps is lacking in depth. It's more like Trisha comes from another direction. It's more, what Black Power nap creates is this rich visual representation of fabulous, luxurious sleep, beautiful with colors and hues and nuances, and they create these beautiful settings for sleep with glittery beds and beautiful fabrics hanging, and really thinks about to create this space. And then they also have been making these photos, inviting their friends and extended family to participate in these spaces and creating these photos. It's so inspiring, and I feel sadness that this is Corona times, and when we will we be able to do this again. It's again, you know, the healing thing, even though we cannot be there, to actually access this representation, to see this, we need to see ourselves doing it, to see it. But it's also very much, although I'm not so interested in teaching the white gaze to see us in other ways, it's also something important how we show up, that this should be as natural as see us struggling or working, that we are absolutely enjoying ourselves, we are lounging, we are sleeping, resting, being together and dreaming, because when we rest and we start to dream, when we feel safe, we can expand. So another very beautiful example of sleep as activism, as a poetic way of being in life.
And then, of course, there's a work of Simone Leigh, which is a way of thinking about maybe more sort of zooming out and thinking more broadly about artistic practice and social justice, and how, you know, one can facilitate the other while still being beautiful, poetic, using the aesthetic languages, but still having an actual direct, you know, impact on community. And this project that Simone Leigh did, Simone Leigh is the artist with locks in the middle, with Creative Time, funk, god, jazz, and medicine. And she developed this Free People's Medical Clinic, which was a literal space where people could get sort of small forms of healthcare advice from nurses and practitioners, whilst at the same time learning about the history of the site and African-American sort of health leadership, really. So yeah, I mean, it'd be wonderful to hear your reflections about Simone Leigh's practice and this idea of using the art space as an opportunity to actually enact the healing that, you know, you're sort of looking for.
Yeah, I knew about her as an artist, Simone. I didn't know about this project, this specific. It was through you, Temi, that I got to know this. And it blew my mind because it was like, this is actually what I've been thinking since 2016. I would like to create that interactive place that has these levels of being both an art space, a cultural space, but also a very hands-on healing place. I mean, Sweden is very different. It's more regulated, who can give medical advice and so on. So I don't know how it would have been possible to do that. Now, there would have been probably other things that we could have done in this space, but then came the pandemic. So I think I want to make another version after the pandemic of the Dreamkeeper, because probably that version would be something more similar to this. Really gathering community, really using the resources inside of the group, but also tapping into things that we can bring in that can be resources for us that come there. So this project, there is a lot to say. I will keep it short. It's more like this desire to have, oh, I wish I would have been there. The way she addresses this is it's so spot on. This is what we need, both with the kind of how she connects, I mean, the music, the medicine, the spirituality, history, future. Yeah, it's she really manifested the whole I mean, the creation of this space. Without me having been there, I can just imagine. I think this kind of dimension of healing also together is extra important in a Swedish context, because we are also even more or less a community here than there.
Places. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I think of this project that she did as really an example of what we really would need here, and to have that community. And I'm so happy that she's she's totally tapping into also this thing in the art world. Sometimes the art world is unsure of what it can allow itself to be, but she's brave and very much like directing. Yeah, this is also art. Me as an artist can be the one who initiates this. I love her for doing this.
And that's why I sort of wanted us to end with a meditation on, or sort of reflecting on another project that Simone did, which was it was just a sort of spontaneous reaction to all of, again, thinking we're back in 2016. This is a really important moment, right? So but she had this project that she was doing in the new museum. She had an exhibition project and she was planning for it. And then came all of these men that were being killed at the hands of the police, Philando Castile, Alton Sterling. And really around this time, July 2016, and she just put out a call on Facebook to artists, Black women artists of color, but women primarily, and just said, you know, I'd love you to do some kind of manifestation in this space. We need to pray for these spirits that are leaving the earth in such a violent and brutalizing way. We need to do a ritual for them. And so inviting all of these women to come into an art space wearing red, and really do liturgies, you know, which is going back to what you were saying before about grieving, you know, that, you know, where is the space to grieve? There's individual grieving, but there's also public grieving, which is necessary for certain kinds of energies surrounding death moments to release themselves.
Yes.
That's why we have public memorials. That's why we have days where we have a moment of silence, because
Yes.
we need to return to that moment. We need to process it on a collective level. And so I think what Simone Leigh did by just sort of doing a call to action and bringing all of these amazing women together to mark the moment, so that it wasn't forgotten, so that, you know, and using the art space to do it, I thought was so powerful, and really got me thinking as well in my own practice about how can the art space or the culture space be used in ways that also serve history, right? That also are for justice.
Yeah. I mean, that is the goal, to be both in a kind of poetic dream landscape with history and mythology, but to also step into now and being in this activist position of trying to actually mobilize something, pushing forward and continuing, not only staying in history like this is what has happened, but actually using that and going and pushing and claiming and moving. Yeah, I am truly curious what our exhibition could have been if there hadn't been the pandemic limitations around it.
Yeah.
You know, Temi.
Yeah. But you know, I've been thinking a lot about, you know, just being in a place. I once gave a talk that was called Just Being There, Decoloniality as a Matter of Presence and Care. And I think there's something in the way in which you have, I mean, the care with which you have brought this project together, responded to this call to action by way of Langston Hughes, but also just the way in which you are thinking very, very carefully about, you know, the future of the planet, the future of, you know, our place and our role within it. You know, how do we create healthy spaces to thrive? So for me, even just beginning to respond to these calls to action, which are futurist, they're Black feminist futurist calls to action, to the world we want to happen by doing something now, I think is really powerful. And even though the corona has got in the way of the embodied connectedness that we could have with different communities and, you know, the whole community in Botswana and Fitja. But still, I think just by being there, just by introducing these energies that come with the plants, that come with the scent works, that come with the images you produced, I think that in itself shifts something, you know.
Yeah, it of course it works in its own, and I hope that many different people get the chance to go in there also. I mean, as long as it's open to take what one needs and get inspired. And yeah, I agree upon everything you said. And of course, it's also important to continue creating these spaces, although there is a pandemic, to just also keep on moving with that, not stopping just because, oh, we have to wait. So maybe it's extra important now to have this space. And also my more intensified personal interest in herbalism also got, it gets activated because there is a pandemic. So I want to learn even more. And for me now, when you're talking about health and we're thinking about wellness, different aspects of what that can be, something I talked to you about before is this, how I perceive plants, herbs, flowers, to build upon our, it's not only about the richness of our traditions, it's also about both claiming what is ours, but really creating a wealth that is sustainable, because to have knowledge of plants and to be connected to plants, both to know how to use them, but really also spiritually connect, both to what they have been used to, what they can be used for, but also just themselves, the meeting between us, to have that connection, that knowledge, having that potential close, also to know that you as a human can support your own existence with food and medicine. That is for me real abundant wealth, because plant life itself has its own regenerative, I mean, the seed pods that come in the end of the seasons, if you take care of them, you have next year's harvest already there in your hand. It's for me something going maybe beyond the Anthropocene and going into that Afrofuturism and really like, yeah, let's reclaim this relationship with plant life, not from this colonial way of harvesting nature or plantation thing with monocrops. No, really go into nature's diversity, and its wonders, and really feel that wealth, that when I have this knowledge and connection, I own so much. I mean, that's, owning without, no one can take it away from you. And it's eternal, That I want to say as really, this is part of the healing for me. It's part of what we can build community around, because we also need each other. I can know everything about plants, but if I don't have brothers and sisters around me to start to manifest this, that knowledge is, it's futile. So that community that I also, although during pandemic restrictions, let's continue building community.
Wow, thank you so much, Cecilia. I think that's a wonderful sort of idea and a sentiment to end with as well. Just thinking about community, but also thinking about wealth as being comprised of a deeper connection to what is already around us, right? Which is, the magic of nature. I'm sort of looking around and seeing all my monstera plants staring at me, waiting to be repotted. I think that this relationship that you have so beautifully unfolded during this conversation is really powerful, and hopefully gives people an opportunity to think differently about, also what it means to be accompanied, right? That, like you say, you describe these plants as allies, so that means that they are company. So it takes a lot before we can really say that we are truly on our own, right? Even if we're seeing an apartment and there's a potted plant there, we are definitely not alone. So
and I think that plants are really also the perfect thing to connect us to so many geographies, our different places. I mean, with the plants one can bring in one's heritage. If I have family in South America, I can bring in South American plants in my house, in my flat or house, or African plants, or from different Asian countries or whatever. But I can also connect to the plants that I have here, where I'm at the moment now, and I can create a medicinal tincture where there are both Scandinavian herbs, and I can also harvest some of the plants from my country of my ancestors. So I mean, in this plant realm, there are infinite possibilities of creating new kind of floras and gardens of Edens, where the multitude of what can coexist it's infinite. It's really, something the plants show you if you're new in a place. I remember moving up north in Sweden, feeling totally lost and not connecting, but the plants helped me to connect to the space, to the place. And so they helped me with my communication with history, ancestors, with the geographical spot I'm in, my future desires. I mean, I can really, as long as I do all this respectfully, without over harvesting, without trespassing the boundaries of what you call it. I mean, when a plant species is almost extinct, I will not try to order that plant through some strange website. Instead, I mean, I must wait until I'm given a seed of it, and then I must grow it and grow it in many, I mean, so that I create more seeds. We always have to be, all of us humans have to be in that kind of very grateful reverence of what the earth brings us, really, to be in that presence. But yeah, the plants that helps us to navigate through space and time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cecilia.
Thank you, Temi, for inviting me today. Thank you, Temi, for inviting me into this project and to give me a chance to deepen my interests and coming in contact with old parts of myself that I had wanted to go deeper in, but I was interrupted, and now I can reconnect, and also being able to explore new things. So for me, it's a mix of these different aspects of my own desires, and through your project, an invitation to this, I got that chance, and I'm very happy and grateful for that.
It's an honor working with you, and it's an honor to have the space to continue to unfold the conversation, which I know we will do in different ways. So thank you, and
thank you.
See you next time. See you soon. Take care.
See you and everybody else that will join us, hopefully.
Yeah.
Also.
Take care.
Take care. Hey.